We're back for another episode of the Amazing City. I think it's episode 33. Let's call it 33.
Yeah,
The Mets are off to a 5-2 start, and if it weren't for bullpen management slash one bad defensive inning from Pete Alonso, and I mean, if it wasn't for Taiwan Walker and Trevor May getting hurt in the same game, very easily the Mets could be looking at 7-0 coming out of the first road trip of the season, which is tremendous. Either way, 5-2 with as of right now a share of first place at the very least. It's an early sample size, but you got to like what the lineup's doing. You have to love what the rotation is doing. They have the best rotation ERA in baseball, among many other things. But there are some problems with the bullpen, but first, let's get some initial reactions. Of course, your hosts, Antonio Slater, Jack Ramsey. Jack, have you? What are your thoughts on the first 7 games of the year?
I mean, I said it the other night. They've been in a position to win every game so far. And that's all you can really ask. You're not going to win every game that you're supposed to. You're not going to win every game that you have a late lead in. That's just baseball. Bullpens are volatile. It happens, but it's hard to really be upset at 5-2. I mean, you could easily say, oh, if this went this way, if this went that way, it happens. I mean, you can make the same case if, certain things didn't go certain ways. The Mets would have lost a couple games. So I think overall you have to be happy with 5-2. Now you're heading back home for the home opener. 6 of your next 10 is with Arizona, who I think has like a 5-10 winning percentage since the start of last year. Obviously, you don't take them lightly. You don't take any team lightly, but you like your chances to get off to a good hot start. I think most importantly, you're 5-2 overall. Yes, but you're 5-2 in the division. Those games are crucial. Washington might be bad, but you have to beat up on the bad teams. You have to beat up on the Nats. You have to beat up on the Marlins.
Look at Atlanta. Atlanta at home lost 2 or 3 to Washington.
No, they're going to be a pesky team. I mean, bad is bad, yeah, but we saw last year the Mets went into Arizona and I think they lost 2 of 3 at a critical point. Peterson got lit up, May blew a late lead. It's going to happen. Bad teams still win games. The Nationals might mess around and lose 100 games, but that still means they would win 62.
Sure.
And considering they play 19 against the Mets, odds are you're going to get a bunch of those against the Mets. So you have to be able to beat them when it counts. But winning road divisional games is huge. The Mets are 5-2 in the division on the road to start. You cannot understate how important that is.
Yeah, I think you really
is the biggest takeaway so far. I mean, we talked about it all winter and even late last year. The Mets lost the division when they stopped winning games in division.
Mm-hmm.
When they started getting shellacked left and right by Philly and Atlanta down the stretch. I mean, you went into Philly with like a half-game divisional lead, and you got swept. And that was really the beginning of the ultimate downfall for the Mets.
Yeah.
And, when their comeback late season failed, it's because they weren't winning against Atlanta and Washington. I mean, even look at 2019. They had a wild card lead. They were right in it. They're at home and they just get knocked around by Atlanta. It happens, but you have to be able to win those games. It's crucial. You cannot understate how important that is. So I think 5-2 on the road in the division to start. Can't really ask for anything more.
Yeah, and I think all that could be said about the Washington series has been said. We're going to talk about it a little bit more later on. But I think one of the key things is you look at that Philadelphia series, and we all know how potent that lineup is going to be. We heard all about it after they made the signings of Schwarber and Castellanos. They still have Real Muto. They still have Harper. They still have Hoskins, who could do some damage. 1 through 9,
Segura,
1 through 9, they could take you deep. 1 through 9, they could do some damage, especially when they have all the guys healthy. I'm not sold on Mickey Moniak based on spring training, but depending on who you talk to, they think he could be an impact player as well. So 1 through 9, that's a deep lineup.
Even Veerling in center.
Yeah.
They have bats.
And in the 27 innings they played, I think they held them scoreless in 23, 24 of them. So that is an incredible sign from the pitching staff there. You had the one bad inning, but
it's going to happen.
You kind of touched on this on Twitter. You have to look at who is giving up these runs. It's not like it's been the high leverage guys. I know Lugo kind of got rocked around in the one game, but if the guys giving up runs and imploding are Joely Rodriguez and Chasen Shreve and Trevor Williams, Sean Reed Foley, I get you don't want to give up 7, you don't want to blow a 7-run lead, but given who was allowing those runs, I think you kind of take it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you also have to look at those guys. Maybe not necessarily Rodriguez, just considering like where he kind of fits into the bullpen picture, and
he's going to have to get better.
Right, and considering like how the way he was brought in, the guys that are giving up runs are guys that are going to be in discussions when your roster shrinks from 28 to 26. You have that extra bullpen arm. You might be looking at a guy like a Reed Foley as the guy who might be the first one to go.
Yeah.
And I think the only time you can, I don't even think you can really falter Williams. I mean, Alonso's glove just let him down. It's going to happen. It happens. You'd like to win those games, but I think Williams did his part. But even looking at Shreve, he's got 2 up downs in the same game. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time he did that.
Yeah.
It's just not something a guy like that is conditioned to do. And you can chalk that up to Buck wanting to get guys in early, not wanting the season to start and have your long man or guys further down the totem pole, not getting in until the 4th or 5th game. And you understand that, especially after a weird spring training, you want to keep arms loose, you want to keep arms hot. You just figure that as the season continues to progress, you find yourself into your more traditional. All right, these are your 4, 5, 6 guys you trust late in games. Here's your long man. Here's your guy to get Harper out. Here's your guy to get Schwarber out. Here's your guy to get Olsen out, whoever. But, until then, you just kind of have to make do with what you have. And I think what they have has looked good.
Yeah. My biggest gripe with going to Trevor Williams in the 8th inning, you can go up and down the list of things that was potentially wrong with that situation. But overall, it was the 3rd game of the year. 4th, how mad can you be about it? It's one thing if you say we want to get these guys in games, we want to get these guys in some innings against major league hitters, and that's one thing. That's fine. But in the last half inning, you showed Trevor May warming up. So what happened in that 15 minutes where you have Trevor May warming up for a one run lead, and then you go Trevor Williams in that same scenario? What happened there? That's my biggest gripe.
I do think you have to kind of look at it from the full picture and understand, the next game he goes out, he gets hurt. He talks about early in the season, he always feels tightness in his elbow and in his forearm and in his biceps. It's just something that naturally happens to him early in the year. It's always possible something flared up, but small enough you don't need to go tell the New York media, oh, hey, by the way, he's got this. So it's not you never know. I think I would guess probably 75, 80% of the reasoning behind a lot of decisions that are made we'll never know about.
Sure.
It's just not something that fans
fine.
and media is privy to. So, you understand it. I think it's too early in the year to be seriously questioning stuff, because I think the bullpen management in Philadelphia, the final couple games, was far better than it was early in the season, where it was clear you're just trying to get guys in.
100%,
I mean, I think, if you have a 4-run lead game 3 in Philly, or game 1 in Philly, or the final game in DC, I think you might see maybe more of your lower totem pole guys. But, you have an off day, you have a 4-run lead, you just want to get this game over with and go home, go for the kill, bring in Diaz. Buck did just that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're starting to see a little bit more of a clearer picture on this now that everyone's got innings in, everyone's gotten in games, seen live batters. I think, I saw it on Twitter yesterday. I think it was Brandon McCarthy who said it, short spring training and all, even if guys are working out in the off season, LaTroy Hawkins chimed in on this too, former Met, said, pitching in a weather controlled indoor facility, no matter how hot or how great you might feel, it's not the same as being in the cold in a night game with live batters there. Right. It's just not the same. You can throw indoor personal bullpens all you want, but that's not the same as the 9th inning having JT Realmuto at the plate. It's not.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think you have to get these guys legit innings. You have to get them hot, especially with the way they ended spring training, 2 games on the road. So it's understandable to an extent. That is kind of the human side of it, that, the numbers might say one thing, but, the numbers are great and all. And I'm a big proponent of analytics and I love it. But at the same time, these are live elbows. These are human beings. Especially you have certain guys who have had injury prone last couple of years. May had his thing last year. Lugo's coming off. This is Lugo's first full season after major arm surgery. Drew Smith has had a whole plethora of injuries. You want to get these guys consistent innings so you're not going 3, 4, 5 days without throwing, without getting in live game action. So, it's easy to sit here and say, well, damn, we could be 7-0. But you have to understand it's still early. You absolutely take 5-2 in divisional play to start the year.
Yeah, listen, you always go back to the old saying of every team's going to win 60 games, every team is going to lose 60 games. So you're going to lose some games that you're not going to want. You're going to lose some heartbreakers like the Washington one where you absolutely should have won. The Philly one, you probably could have won that one as well, but these things happen. It's early in the season. You're still 5-2. 5-2 on a road trip, no matter what part of the season it is, you're happy with that.
And even no matter who you're playing. No matter who you're playing.
Absolutely. And the early returns of some of these guys, Alonso is leading the league and leading National League in RBIs basically from 2 games. Lindor's OPS is approaching 875, I think.
858.
858. There you go. I don't know where he is at this point last year, but I can guarantee you it was not 858.
453.
There you go. He quite literally doubled his OPS. So again, small sample size, but Eduardo Escobar leads major leagues in walks. And again,
I was looking at this before we hopped on.
Yeah.
His career high in walk rate before this year was around 8.6%. That was in 2018. Right now he's sitting at like 29.6.
Hold on. 8% was his career high in walks. 8 walk rate.
Yeah. He was walking 8%. He's not always been a huge OBP guy.
Right.
But, you know, as I pointed out on my Twitter account, anywhere where you can get additional walks, more guys on base that you're not expecting, you take it. Take it. So even if Eduardo Escobar is now sitting at like a 10, 11% walk rate, you take that.
Absolutely.
You take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
You can't complain about it.
You look at what he's done. You look at what Mark Canha has done. He cooled off a little bit the last couple of games of the Philadelphia series, but his on base is still like 600 or something like that.
And I'm not a huge proponent of lengthening the lineup and all this and all that because I don't necessarily believe in it.
Okay.
But Canha is a guy who's going to drag out at bats, you know, especially early in the year when a lot of guys are on pitch counts. A lot of guys, you know, we saw it yesterday, Clayton Kershaw, 80 pitches. That's it. You know, we see it with Zach Wheeler and we see it with the first 2 games in Philly.
Yeah.
You know, guys who are on strict pitch counts, a guy that can drag out at bats and isn't just going to, you know, it's going to be a really tough two-strike hitter. That's valuable early in the year. That is very valuable.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like we now have 2 different versions of Jeff McNeil. We have one from the left, one from the right. It seems like all the time. I mean, we have Nimmo on the top of the order too. Every time with those 3 different guys in the lineup, you can get down to 0-2, but then you bat your eye and it's 3-2 and they're making the guy throw 10 pitches. Even if they don't get the results, they don't get on base, they don't hit a home run, they don't drive in a run, they're going to make these guys work. They're going to see the pitches. And no matter what, that's something that analytics aren't going to really show because that's valuable information for you, the guy behind it, and the rest of the lineup, because that's something that you can share once you get back into the clubhouse. So,
and I think that's a major
difference with these guys.
And I think it's a major difference from last year because I think last year we saw a lot of guys, specifically later in the season, when you look at the likes of a VR, of a Pilar, of a Baez, you know, they're not great 2-strike hitters and they're getting a lot of at-bats. So a lot of these at-bats, once you get 0-2, you get maybe 1-2 on a good day, 3 more pitches.
Right.
In that at-bat. But we see guys like Nimmo, we see guys like Canha, we see guys like McNeil, even Escobar so far, who are drawing out these at-bats. And I think in a division where you have some majorly suspectable bullpens, behind solids, like when we get to Miami, we're going to see it. A very, very good starting rotation. But once you get them out of the game, it's
questionable at best.
No, I mean, I think like, you look at Philly, and this is what I think is a major difference between Philly and the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
The Mets have probably 5 or 6 guys in their pen. Well, I'll say 4 or 5, not including Diaz because he's penciled in as your closer, who you can bring in the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning, and you trust them.
Yeah.
I mean, Shreve has looked very good so far.
Sure.
Considering what you expect from him, and just, I think when you take out the fact that he was sent back out for, you know, technically after a second up down, he's looked good. Drew Smith has looked great.
Oh my God!
I mean, the numbers are
Drew. Please,
the numbers are a little iffy on him. He's given up a lot of hard contact, but he's keeping it all on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have May, who looked good aside from one walk where he then came out injured and a bomb to the best player in baseball.
What are you gonna do?
Ottavino has looked good.
Ottavino's looked really good.
Diaz has looked good. Edwin Diaz's slider is on like a different planet right now. That's an early contender for the best pitch in baseball this year. I mean, 11 sliders in the 2-0 win against Philly. 8 of them were whiffs.
Yeah,
that's insane.
And it's not like
is utterly. Yeah, it's not like he's serving.
It's me and you up the plate. He's throwing this to some of the best hitters in baseball. He's Bryce Harper. He won MVP last year.
He's running it in on Kyle Schwarber's back foot, and there's nothing Schwarber can do about it. I mean, he's making Harper, Hoskins, Real Muto, Castellanos
look straight up
Schwarber.
Stupid.
He's making them look stupid. I mean, that is, and you know, I think one of my guys, Dillett, pointed it out. You know, the fastball has not gotten a swing and miss yet this year, but it seems like there's a difference in how he's approaching the usage of the fastball slider.
Yeah.
think it's either changeup, two seam, somewhere in the middle hybrid there.
Yeah.
He's using the slider as a punch out pitch a lot more than he seems, and it just feels like he has before. He's using his fastball as more of a setup pitch. But if your slider is going to have that type of movement and get you that type of success, by all means. Because I think one thing we've seen a lot with Diaz is he's had to change up his approach a little bit here and there because when guys get onto him, they get onto him. When that fastball is flat and not moving, it's a problem. But he's been very fastball reliant, it feels, the past couple of years in comparison to so far this year. Granted, it's only been 3 appearances, and he gave up a stupid
I'm not even going to talk about that home. I'm not worried about that
The expected batting average on that was 160. At that point, he's the MVP for a reason. Props. It's like the Marcelo Zuna home run 2 years ago. Dude took 98 up on the up and away black and pulled it for a homer. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Great players hit great pitches. Tip your cap. It is what it is. But Diaz has just looked great. I don't even think you can really complain about anything so far. And again, the guys who are getting knocked around in your bullpen have either been because of a little bit of mismanagement and pushing guys to see what they can do, or just because, they're guys that are lower on your totem pole.
Yeah.
And I'm not
worried.
Think we can already almost confidently say, if you're looking at your number one lefty coming out of the bullpen, it's Chase and Shreve.
Right.
And it's not because the sky is falling apart and none of your lefties can get anyone out. It's because Shreve has looked good.
He's looked very good.
I noted in the offseason, I saw that his slider added a couple more inches of depth to it and has a little bit more movement. That slider looked great so far.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really hard to be upset with the way your pen has looked. I mean, you can say all you want, about Williams and all that, but in the end, he's your long man. He's a guy who's going to piggyback.
And he did his job. He got 5 ground balls in the inning.
What more? Yeah, I know. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
They just found holes.
He's doing his part. He's doing his part.
Yeah.
Even like, who am I thinking of? Whatever.
Yeah, but while you're thinking about that, all I know to say is I don't know if there is some sort of award for pitching coach of the year, but if there is, Jeremy Hefner has to be one of the leading contenders so far through the first week of the season.
I thought you were going to say Chris Bassett.
No, you know what? It's not a bad point. It's not a bad point. It goes back to what we're saying about the new guys. He brought in the entire pitching staff with the exception of Max Scherzer, because who the hell needs to help Scherzer do anything? It's like, let's all gather around, look at the iPad. And I love how he said that he doesn't like to evaluate his own film, but he likes to break down other people's films. That just screams future pitching coach to me. But he even said, like, hey, they're leaning on the fastball. So start using the curveball. He did. And my God, Tyler McGill, he hasn't led a run. It's crazy. We're now going into the second rotation through in the Mets starters.
Second turn through the rotation. Yeah.
Thank you. Words are hard. The only one that's given up more than a single run in a game is Max Scherzer. Can we talk about that for a second?
Here's another thing I'll point out, because we were talking about it in, I think a Mets fan group chat I'm in. I think Sam Lebowitz and my man Jordan made 2 really good points. McGill throwing 100 is very different from Jacob deGrom throwing 100.
Oh my God,
That's the first point, because, as it's been publicized and pointed out the last couple of years, DeGrom does not lift. He does not lift weights. And DeGrom is 100 pounds lighter than Tyler McGill, and significantly shorter, I believe. Or I think McGill has a couple inches in height on DeGrom too. So that man is more
100 pounds lighter.
I believe so. It's something like that, or it's around there.
He's also 6 years younger.
Jacob deGrom's 180 pounds.
Okay, yeah, McGill is definitely not 280. I'll give him 230.
It's coming in at 240. Okay. Well, still. Okay, yeah, probably 60, 70 pounds, depending on when those measurements were taken.
Yeah, but that DeGrom at 180, he's 180 soaking wet.
Yeah. But that's a guy who can, if you're coming at 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 240, you can throw 100. It's cool. That's not even pointing out that his off-speed pitches have gotten faster. His changeup's touching 90. Dare I say it's sitting so 90. Good. It's just insane. So I think you feel a lot more comfortable about your rotation now than you did 2-3 weeks ago when we got the DeGrom news. And even Walker. precautionary IL stint early in the year. But if he's going to be effective this year, it's going to be the splitter.
Yeah.
And the splitter was dancing his first start.
It looks so good.
I mean, even Carrasco's first start. It was nothing special. It was nothing that's jumping out on the screen at you, but it was effective. It got the job done. And he looked in control of the game, which is something we have not seen from Carlos Carrasco before as a Met.
If the only run he gave up was a home run to Nelson Cruz, his 450th of his career, you're going to be more than happy with that. And then he retired 14 in a row after that.
David Peterson coming in for Walker. God. You looked great.
That was the best we've seen from David Peterson since 2020.
That's probably the best since that game in Tampa.
Right. He was excellent.
So you feel a lot more comfortable about your rotation given some small injuries to Walker. You feel a lot more comfortable about it now than you did, I think, 2-3 weeks ago when you're already asking yourself, all right, well, shit, who's after David Peterson?
Right.
Because it's not more so of a question of, all right, well, if Peterson isn't going to cut it, then who can? Because after his last start, you're very comfortable with him. I think, or not his start, but after his long relief appearance,
you can call it a start.
You're far more comfortable with him now than you were before.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to do a full 6 innings. If you want to do like a 4-inning start and then go to the bullpen after that, hopefully you have the lead. I think you're okay with that.
No, I mean, if Peterson gives you 2 times through and you go to Williams after and see how much he can give you, then you have a long man for a reason.
Right, especially here in April.
Right, and I think even now, I think it might have been more of an outlier from Reed Foley yesterday, but even then, I think he's a guy who you can still mostly trust to be a guy who can get you one time through the rotation and give you 2-3 innings. I think that's fine. I think
yesterday was a weird day. No one could find the strike zone. I mean, the guys in the Philly bullpen, they can't find the strike zone on a good day. But Nola was wild. Scherzer was wild the first few innings. Well, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the humidity, but it seemed like no one could really control the ball. And then besides Diaz looked stupid good.
And I was going to make the point earlier before I got off track about the Philly bullpen. It seems like they're bulk guys or middle inning guys. If you're leaning on Connor Brogdon, if you're leaning on Falter, if you're leaning on, they still have Coonrod?
No,
Coonrod.
They still got Dominguez in there though.
Yeah, and Jose Alvarado. I mean, that's bullpens are volatile as it is, but that's a very volatile bullpen.
And then you can't forget 2 Met legends, Familia and Brad Hand.
Yeah, it's.
I called that Brad Hand save from Jump Street. That guy was so atrocious with the orange and blue. And then he goes to Philly in a big game, and he looks like Josh Hader out there. I called it from a mile away.
But you know what? I think that's gonna be what the Philly bullpen is this year.
Right.
You're gonna have some days where they are shut down. They might not let you get on base the final time through the order, the final 9 outs. But there are gonna be other days where it's just not on. And it's the days it's not on is going to be a mess.
It's going to be bad.
It's going to be a mess. So I think the way I look at it is the Mets bullpen has far less question marks. I mean, what Diaz is. Ottavino has looked good. Lugo looked good his last outing. May has looked good. Shreve has looked good. Smith has looked good. Williams did his part. Defense let him down. And then you have Joely Rodriguez and Sean Reed Foley as your 8th and 9th relievers right now. And if they get lit up, they get lit up. They're far enough down in your totem pole, it's not a huge disaster. Yeah, but I think you're at a point now, I think, after seeing how good Smith and Ottavino have looked so far, albeit a double off Ottavino to a damn good hitter at that, you have 5 or 6 guys you trust with a late lead. I mean, Drew Smith came in looking like an older Seth Lugo a couple days ago.
Drew Smith looks so good. He's off to a tremendous start. I get he's giving up a lot of hard contact, but
if you keep that on the ground, that's manageable.
Yeah.
And it's also just such a small sample size.
Mm-hmm. It's a very fair point.
So, I mean, I think genuinely...
Ask White Sox fans if they're concerned about Liam Hendricks right now.
And I just think genuinely, Sean Reed Foley is pretty clearly the odd man out when the bullpen shrinks back down to 8.
Definitely.
And Joely Rodriguez might be your only real work in progress. Everyone else,
he's going to
have some level of trust in.
I think Rodriguez is going to have to stay up in the big leagues because you need 2 lefties.
I don't think he has options either.
That's another good point. That's another fair point.
And you can't just cut bait a month after a trade.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when you gave up a solid reliever.
Yeah. And Sure, you could bring up Claudio, I guess, but is that much of an upgrade over Joely Rodriguez?
No, I
We
mean,
don't know.
his stuff
But
against lefties has looked great.
yeah,
But I think the thing the Mets are currently figuring out is, you especially with the 3 batter minimum, you want a lefty who can get righties out in between the lefty. You have, I think the perfect example: Schwarber, Real Muto, Harper. You
mm-hmm.
get Schwarber, you can get Harper, but that guy in the middle takes you deep.
He takes a 440 left center.
Like, and you know what? That's something you got to work on. And I know personally for a fact, Buck loves the lefty you can get the righty out in between.
Oh, what manager wouldn't?
Buck, right? And Buck has said that that's the most important guy in your bullpen.
Yeah,
Is the lefty you can get the righty out in between two good lefties. And I think as of right now, it's far more clear Chase and Shreve can do that, and he's done it in his career. His numbers against righties are still pretty good for his career. He's done that. But I just think, Rodriguez's stuff is better than Shreve. So you want to be able to get him to a point where he can do that, because that changeup, when it's on, it's dancing.
Sure.
I mean, he is burying that back foot that has such a steep dive to it, coming out the hand, looking like a fastball. It's a great pitch when it's on. But you have to get him to a point where you're not asking, all right, well, which Joe Elliott are we getting today? He had a couple moments in Philly where he looked really good. And you're like, all right, I see what Epler sees.
Right.
I see what the team sees. But then you have a couple batters where you're like, I see what Cashman saw. I get it.
See what Texas saw.
Right. Yeah. So, it's just getting him to that point.
Yeah. But I mean, you're absolutely right.
You're going to have games like yesterday where your bullpen just isn't totally on. You're going to have some guys give up some runs. But if you're going to go out and put up 9 runs,
you're still feeling good.
You're going to win a lot more of those games than you're going to lose. And I think we need to take a second to talk about the offense, because I was doing some research before the show. Last year, the Mets team on base percentage was .315 for the year. It was not great.
Right.
You had a lot of guys that were all or nothing, not great OBP guys. Again, I'll bring up the same 3 guys: Pilar, VR, Baez. They're just not great OBP guys. Conforto going to have a great OBP season. And then you had like April, May, and June of the replacements. I don't think really ask Wilfredo Tovar and all them to get on base.
Janescu Farkas. The GOAT.
Hey man, he's off to a good start in Double-A.
I mean, he's really good.
You miss him.
Yeah.
But so far, through 7 games, albeit, you're 7 games. You're not even 5% of the way into the season, if even. The Mets team OBP is at .365.
It's a lot better.
And it feels like, I didn't do the research on these numbers to back it up. It just feels like they're putting up better at bats with runners in scoring position. Yesterday they had a couple where they get guys on, but haven't necessarily been able to get them in. But, you hope the power from everyone else starts to come around. You only have, I think, Nimmo, Lindor, and Pete on the board for home runs yet, and McNeil. But yeah. McNeil only has 1, and aside from that, hasn't had great, power output so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like an Escobar. Right. I mean, if he puts up 10, 15 home runs, but he's hitting in the 300s, you live with that.
Yeah.
But, I think, the power is going to come around for Escobar. We saw it in spring.
He almost had one yesterday, dead center.
Right. Yeah. I think Marte's start is a little concerning, but not terribly. I mean, I think he's still good enough that you don't worry about it yet. I mean, especially after the year he had last year. I mean, top 20 in baseball in F4, pitchers and offensive players.
Yeah.
It's just a cold start. It's going to happen. But I think once the power starts to come around, I think it's going to be a better offense than people give it respect for. I mean, you just go 1 through 8 deep, and then you just kind of throw your hands up with the catching situation. But, I mean, and you're even in a spot where you have some solid bats coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jankowski's looked good in this couple games that he's gotten into.
He had a 3-hit game in Washington, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, granted, Dom's had a small start. Dom's had a soft start, but you know what he is. And I think with the role he's in now, he's succeeded in before. He succeeded in it very well in 2019. But, you're also still figuring out, DHing, how to keep guys happy, all that. And I don't know how much longer they're going to keep trotting Cano out as the DH, considering he hasn't hit a ball out of the infield yet this year.
Yeah.
I think maybe had like 1 fly out. But I think it's a deep enough bench. And I think that the lineup you have is just deep enough that I don't think the offense is as worrisome as people thought it was going to be coming into the year.
I was never really concerned about the lineup. I understand that it's not as power happy as some other lineups out there, but I've always thought the first 3 to 4 weeks power wise are going to be kind of a wash because it's kind of cold up in New York. There's not a whole not the ball's not going to fly. But then once you get into the summer months, and we've seen it, the ball starts flying. So I'm not concerned about that. But if you can get the 10 to 12 hits that they're getting every day, and they're scoring 6 to 8 runs every day with maybe 1 home run a game, well, who's complaining? You got Pete driving the balls at all sides of the field. You got Lindor actually hitting the ball hard. McNeil looks like the McNeil of 2018, 2019. Brandon Nimmo is going to get on base 400 times. This is a good lineup. I'm not really worried about Marte, especially because, he came into camp. He had the oblique. It was a short spring training for these guys. It just seems like everyone's still a little out in front. They're hitting the ball on the ground a lot more than I would like, but they're scoring runs still. They're together runs. They're having good rallies.
I'm not a huge batting average guy, but I still think it's somewhat useful from like from a team perspective. I mean, of their 7 guys that are in there every day, so everyone but the catchers and the DHs. I mean, your worst average is Marte at 231, and then everyone else is at 250 or above. I mean, Lindor's at 250, Escobar's 263, Alonso 267, Nimmo, Canna, and McNeil are all up above 300.
If you have 1/3 of your lineup over 300, you're feeling good about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're at a point where the offense has looked good enough that you're not like terribly. I mean, 6 of their 7 everyday guys have OPS is over 850 right now.
And I think the major league average like 730. Just to put that into perspective.
I mean, I haven't looked at like the clutch situation stats. I don't know how they're hitting with runners on. I don't know how they're hitting late in games. But
one thing I do know, because I very purposely looked this up, I forget the number what was last year. I think it was like 2. We'll call it between 210 and 225 with runners in scoring position. As of right now, they're hitting 277. That's like the 4th best clip in the National League.
You take that 7 days a week and twice on Sundays.
Yeah. Again, it's a very small sample size, but compared to last year, Jesus Christ, it was like bases loaded, nobody out. Let's see if we can maybe scratch out a run from a double play. It's like, but now you get first and second, and it seems like you get first and second every freaking inning because they're drawing so many walks. And can we stop getting hit by pitch? Can we stop getting hit by pitches? It's great to boost the on base. It's great to get guys on. It's great to move the guys over and lean into one, take one for the team every now and then. But can we stop getting hit by multiple pitches every game? I'm going to have a heart attack.
I mean, as long as
someone going to get hurt. If we didn't have the C-flap, we have our 2 best hitters on the injured list for months.
I mean, I was going to make the point earlier. Like, I think you just, softly brought it up. I think as long as they keep on putting themselves in situations to bring guys in, they'll keep bringing them around. And I think it's a deep enough lineup that really until you get to the 8 and 9 spot, depending on where McNeil's hitting, granted Marte's slow start, I don't think there's only really 1 or 2 spots in the lineup per game where you're like, okay, well, this might not be a great spot.
Yeah, it's Cano spot and McCann.
Yeah, I mean, it's
call really, spade a spade.
I mean, and even when Cano's not in the lineup and you got a guy like Dom or a guy like JD up, you still trust them to be able to at least get a fly ball, advance runners, drive the runs in. I mean, JD's only had 8 at bats, I think 10 plate appearances so far, but he's been on 4 times. And, I think the Mets are sooner or later going to realize that Dom is not going, JD could DH tomorrow and go 0 for 4.
Right.
And suddenly he's 2 for 12 to start.
Right.
But Cano's a lost cause. There's nothing to try and salvage. It's bad. It's horrid. Just give it up.
Yeah.
Just give it up. You got to get JD and Dom semi-regular at bats. It seems like they're making that better effort with Dom now.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't forget about JD. You can't. I mean, when he is going and he's right, that's a legitimate power threat from the right side. That not that you don't totally have, but after Pete, I mean, you have Escobar and Lindor who have good power from the right side. But if you're looking at strictly right-handed hitters, Canna's not going to hit a lot out. McCann's not going to hit a lot out.
You better hope Marte pops him out so your 30-30 looks good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get there on stolen bases.
We're going to get there.
But I think you need to get more power in your lineup, especially right now when with guys being cold, the weather being cold, you're not getting a lot of pop
Mhm.
naturally from the climate. But I think once you start, I think if you get JD into the lineup more, you're just helping yourself out. I mean, JD and Dom are two guys with legitimate major league power. So I think the more you get them in the lineup, the better. And you hope the buck comes around to getting them at bats late in games. I mean, they had a couple spots, a couple days in a row where you're like, this is a good spot for Dom, this is a good spot for JD, you know, and they're not always going to get in. It is what it is, but you hope that as the season progresses, and as Cano continues to not be good, that these guys are going to get more at bats, more regular at bats, more late in game at bats. And I do think it's something you're going to have to kind of start to figuring out how to work is a National League roster without pinch hitting for the pitcher.
Yeah, like
It's situate like I think it was even like the third day in the game they lost in DC. I mean, Cano in against the lefties, he's behind and under 40, 94, 95 mile per hour fastballs at the letters. And you're asking yourself, this is like the perfect spot for JD.
yeah, like the game yesterday when Alvarado came in to face Dom. I
It's a
get
great
Dom and
spot for
Alvarado
JD.
have some history there, but yeah, it's a great spot for JD. He
I mean,
mashes lefties. That's the one thing he's good at. And I just kind of
it's a
looked it
great
up
spot for
while
it's a
you were
great spot
talking.
for any righty.
When we've talked about, there's historically, there's not going to be a whole lot of power output from this Mets lineup in the early months. Some guys get off to slow starts. Like I know Pete is historically a slow starter. Lindor kind of gets off to slow starts during throughout his career too. But who gets off to really, really good starts in March and April? I hate the guy. JD Davis is a monster in April. Even going back to his Houston days, his career OPS in April is over 900. That's
Yeah.
pretty damn good. And that's a sample size going back to 2017. So, I mean, you got to try to get these guys some at bats, especially if they're bringing in a lefty reliever. If it's a close game, Dom's great. He needs to get his at bats as well. But when he's already 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts and they're bringing in a high leverage lefty, maybe you got a guy that's going to hit a lefty better than Dom Smith. That would have been a good spot for Dom. And I'm sure, like you said, Buck's trying to work things out, how to properly use his bench with no pitcher spots. So you don't have to worry about, the solidified pinch hitting spot there. But that would have been something I'm doing. I'm not going to really question Buck right now, though, because he's very quickly won me over simply in the first 2 games, like the first 14 innings with how he treated that Washington series and how he stuck up for his players. That was one of my biggest gripes about Rojas is it just felt like he didn't really stick up for the guys. When someone was getting hit and it seems like they were always pitching inside, it seemed like he didn't, not that he didn't care, but he
Just didn't
didn't.
say anything.
Right.
He let it happen.
Right. Exactly. Buck, you could tell very quickly if there's something he doesn't like, he's going to let you know. He's going to let your manager know. He's going to let the entire team know that shit is going to fly against the New York Mets. He almost looked like he was going to fight the pitcher himself. And I love that.
No, I mean, you can
it's
tell
such
the guy.
a breath of fresh air.
I think you can even tell with the difference in Pete's answers about playing first base in versus DHing in years past versus this year. In years past, it's been, I'm a damn good first baseman. I want to play first. I'm an everyday first baseman. Whereas yesterday, he was more so like, yeah, I'm a damn good first baseman. I want to play first base, but I trust in Buck. I trust Buck wants to win and will do what's best for the team. So just kind of like going from there. And I think that's something that like you can tell the guys respect Buck.
Mm-hmm.
And even like dating back to like Callaway, you questioned how much you could easily question how much the guys were really respecting Mickey.
Right.
And even I think the last guy you really say that like the team full on respected was Terry.
Without question.
And that's you're now 2-3 managers removed from that. And you can tell the
4
guys
if you include Beltran.
Well, you can tell the guys respect Buck and they're gonna buy into what he's preaching.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good staff, and for the first time in a while, this is going to sound so goddamn cheesy and corny. For the first time in a while, it seems like this team is really a team. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to go jump out of this window as soon as we're done recording here. But it feels like there's some like sincerity behind the answers now. It's kind of like going back to what you're saying. It's not like they're just saying things to say them. It's not like they're just saying these because they know it's the right PR and media training things to say, but it's like what they really feel. A perfect example, what Chris Bassett said. This is the second time we're talking about him without even really talking about him. The way he responded to pitching to guys no matter what, to the Juan Soto's and Nelson. Oh man, I like the way this team is acting. I like the way that they're answering questions, and I like the way they're presenting themselves. I have very few complaints so far. 1 week in the season, we can come back here next week, and I'll be one of the people to say the sky is falling. But as of right now, I'm a very happy Mets fan.
Yeah, and I just think these guys hear what people say. They watch MLB Network. They read the projections. A lot of people were very high on the Mets going into the lockout. With the expectations of doing more, and they don't. And as Philly and Atlanta and all them continue to add, the Mets didn't do much more. So they hear all that. They see people saying, all right, well, the Mets are probably the third best team in the division, and you got to watch out for the Marlins. If the Marlins have a good year, and the Mets don't entirely click, this could be a fourth place team. That's, kind of like a 500, whatever. Bullpen isn't good enough. Rotation isn't deep enough. Lineup still needs another bat, yada, yada, yada. And, and I think Buck's an old school enough guy that he's willing to be one. He's like, you know what? Look at this. See what they're saying. Prove them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think last year you had the Mets who were just kind of complacent being in first place. They were, it's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. But, they didn't do a lot at the deadline. They didn't really kind of seem like a team. It was, I remember a lot of their answers being like, but like, we're still in first place. So you're just happy to be in first place. Like, oh, well, we're still here. We're still in the playoff hunt. We're still in the picture. Then before you know it, you're 6, 7, 8 games under in mid-September. And your elimination number is 3 or 4. Right. And Atlanta's rolling everyone over. Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, they're all doing their thing in Atlanta, pushing the envelope. And the Mets they just laid down. So, and
complacency is a very good word for
it. I think that'll be the biggest test for this Mets team is how they handle, early / mid-season success. If we look up June 1st and they're still in first place, is their mantra going to be maintain first place, stay where we are, or are they going to be pushing the envelope? All right, yeah, we're first place. We're 6 games up. Let's be 10 up by July 1st.
Yeah.
Let's go be aggressive at the deadline. Because you can critique Billy Epler all you want. Didn't have a great run in Anaheim. Castro Rodriguez trade kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. But the man's aggressive, if nothing else.
Right.
I mean, that man just handed out huge contracts in LA as if like he was Oprah.
Yeah.
And he comes in, throws massive money at Max Scherzer, throws big money at Marte. Trades a good prospect for only a guaranteed year of Chris Bassett. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the organization as a whole approaches early mid-season success this time around as opposed to last year.
Yeah, and I hope they do exactly what you said and maintain Billy Epler's MO, and that's be aggressive at the deadline. Because
and I think
we're very happy with it right now. But again, that's 7 games in. We could be looking June 1st and say, you know what, this bullpen is a massive freaking problem because it is El Stinko. I'm not saying it's going to be. I like the back end of the bullpen, but there could be more.
I mean, even like in 30 hours, if the Mets get shellacked tomorrow at home and Bassett doesn't look good and it's Tom Seaver statue day and you get run out of your own ballpark, then you're
going to be good.
Then the sky's falling down again.
The sky's falling down again. So I mean, that's Mets fans. One day the sky's falling. The next day is get ready to raise the banner. That's how it is in Queens.
Yeah. But, I just think you're happy with early season success. You see the potential. Some of the questions are starting to be answered. I think one of the big ones coming into the year was, all right, you're looking at the middle of your bullpen. Who's going to step up?
Right.
Is it Shreve? But, nobody wanted him. You got him on a minors deal. Is it Ottavino? But Ottavino has not been great the past couple of years. Is it Drew Smith? Well, can he stay on the field? I mean, even Lugo and May. They're still good. They're still good relievers, but are these guys who can consistently get you through the 7th and the 8th to Diaz in the 9th?
Right.
You even look at Edwin. Edwin's got his moments here and there. I mean, Edwin was great to start the year last year, but then he had like a week and a half stretch where it all fell apart. But I also think the Mets bullpen, I think, is better than last year for one.
Okay.
And I also think you have more experienced guys. That's why I did kind of like the signing of Ottavino more than others, Because if Ottavino is on, he's a guy you can run out there in big late games to get you outs, especially if he's, Rockies Adam Ottavino, which he's looked like so far. Because those were playoff Colorado teams
Right.
with Ottavino at the back end of that bullpen, with Jake McGee, Wade Davis. But he was getting big outs late in games at a playoff push. So I think that's also important to have because the past couple of years it's felt like, okay, Edwin's not on. Who are we going to? You had Lugo for a while, but even then it was like, okay, Edwin's not on. Who's getting us to Lugo?
Right.
And you didn't know. And you just didn't know. But I think now you're at a point where you just kind of think to yourself, all right, Diaz is not on, but you have guys who are more comfortable running out late in games and even for save opportunities because it's not their first time doing it. And, and some guys just are not built mentally. So you have to remember the mental aspect of it. Some guys just mentally are not the guy who you can give ninth inning adrenaline to. Diaz thrives off it. He's made it clear he thrives off it.
He's made it very clear.
I mean, he's outwardly said that the adrenaline is what gets him going. But now you have guys that are, even like a guy like Trevor May, who was doing it in Minnesota. He's now doing it here. He had a full year doing it last year. Ottavino, Shreve's been around the block, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you have even guys like Drew Smith who are getting more and more big appearances late in games. And you're just kind of building yourself up to be a less anxious bullpen. Because I think for as much as the numbers are important, you still have to recognize the human aspect of it. Some guys just aren't built for that. Some guys mentally, even like Alec Boehm, you see, like he gets in his head, one mistake gets in his head right away.
You're on the money today, man.
But you know what? Like that's going to happen. It's going to happen. But the way through that is to work through it.
Yeah.
More and more chances. I think the Mets might be looking, to make Drew Smith kind of like your multi-inning 4, 5, 6 out middle reliever. If someone has a short start, but you don't want to bring Trevor Williams in the 6th, and May might be unavailable. Whoever's unavailable, Drew Smith might be that guy to get you 4, 5, 6 outs to bridge you to Diaz.
And I haven't really dove into his numbers yet, but I'm pretty sure he's a guy that can get both righties and lefties out pretty well. So again, it's just
it felt like
stay on the damn field, Drew.
I mean, it felt like the other night they were building him up for a little bit more of like a multi-inning reliever type role, and he looked great. He was still pumping 97, 98 at his last batter. So I think if you're getting that type of Drew Smith, that answers so many questions because you no longer are looking at Drew Smith and like, all right, he's a 1-inning middle relief guy. You can send them out in the 6th to bridge your way to Ottavino in the 8th, or bridge your way to May in the 8th, or Shreve, or whoever it's going to be to bridge you to Diaz. The more confident you are in getting outs from your middle relievers, the less stressful your bullpen is.
100%.
Because I think people even forget, if Drew Smith comes in for 3 straight, or whoever comes in for 3 straight 1-inning outings and blows one of them and gives up a run, he's still putting up a 3 ERA. That's just the nature of bullpens.
That's also how math works.
Yes. Well, some people don't get that.
Math is hard, man.
Math is hard. Baseball's hard. But, a lot of people don't seem to forget that, everyone's not going to be an Addison Reed type setup guy.
Right.
Everyone's not going to be like
Shout
a
out
prime.
Addison Reed.
Love Addison Reed. Not everyone's going to be like a prime Lugo setup guy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have 4, 5, 6 guys who can run out there with ERAs and the 2s and the 3s and whatever, that's a good bullpen.
Yeah.
Like my measure of a good bullpen is as minimal guys that make you anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And right now of the 9, I think 1.5 make me anxious.
Reed, Foley, Rodriguez. Half of Rodriguez.
Yes. Rodriguez against righties.
Okay, I think that's
Reed,
fair.
Foley in general.
It's a fair stipulation.
Then when you get to 8 guys, Reed, Foley's probably gone. You just got to figure out how to get Joely through the righties.
Yeah, because I'm not worried about Trevor Williams out of the bullpen because more often than not, he's not pitching in 1-run games in the 8th inning. He's going to be a bridge guy after David Peterson goes the first 4.
Or even like if you have starts like yesterday where Scherzer only gets you 5 innings, or whoever gets you 5 innings with a high pitch count, Williams can probably get you the 6th and the 7th.
Yeah.
Or even like if you're right, or even if you're up, 8-1 late in a game,
give him a 3-inning save. Screw it.
Exactly.
Save the bullpen.
Effective longmen, I think, are kind of lost in today's game
mm-hmm.
because they're not guys that are going to statistically jump off the page They're not guys that are going to light up their Savant page. They're not guys that are going to light up analytics. But if you have a guy who can come in, surrender maybe 1-2 runs in a blowout, get you 3-4 innings, we're not having instances like in DC when you have Adam Ottavino coming in with a 5-run lead.
Yeah, but then
You
in
save your
fairness,
bullets for when it counts.
one of the big relief signings this year was Colin McHugh, and that's how he started. He was a failed starter, so he went to the bullpen. That's how he became a very effective long relief guy. And then he went to Tampa, where he became a very effective high leverage guy. And now he's in Atlanta trying to do the same thing. Not off to the greatest start, but again, it's so early in the season, you can't really take anything from it. I think that's really all we could talk about in terms of the past series. We need to kind of look forward to the next series. We're now going to the first homestand of the season with the unveiling of the Tom Seaver statue, with a 3-game set against Arizona Diamondbacks. Quick little thing about them. They have the worst team batting average, not just in the National League, but I believe in all of baseball. So this could be an opportunity where we really see not just the starting pitcher staff continue the strong stretch, but hopefully you see the bullpen, it really 1 through 9 in the bullpen, get off to better starts and kind of even out a little bit in terms of those, especially those lower guys that we just talked about. This is a series where I think if you don't take at least 2, you're upset with it.
Yeah, and I think that should be the outlook of most any series when you're a good team. You always want at least a split. If you got 3, you're hoping for a series win. And I think you just kind of hope it's a low leverage, low stressful enough series on your arms, because then right after that, you have 4 with the Giants who won 108 last year.
Right.
And it's still at home. And I think it's an important home stretch because if you're at a point where, game 3 of that series, it's a 4-2 game, you gotta throw Ottavino and you gotta throw Diaz. It's just less bullets you have for a series with a team that just won 108 games.
Yeah.
So I think the goal is just beat the hell out of them. I mean, that should be the goal. That's the goal for every game. I think this series specifically, just knowing what's after it, you want to be able to get through it with as minimal stress on your arms as possible. Even if they throw bullets, even if they have to go throw Ottavino 2 games, Diaz 2 games, whoever, you want them to be low stress innings because I think we've all learned, even just listening to Jake talk, the difference between high stress innings and low stress innings, high stress pitches versus low stress pitches. If you're in trouble out of the gate as a starter and you're throwing 90 high stress pitches, that's very different than you're just cruising and you throw 105.
It absolutely is.
And even coming out of the pen, you don't want to have stressful innings on your relievers in games where you feel like you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
So, I think their next 10 is 3 at home with Arizona, 4 at home with San Francisco, 3 on the road with Arizona. We'll talk about that next episode.
For sure.
That road trip. But I just think for the 7-game homestand, I think a reasonable goal is take the series from Arizona and at least shoot for a split with San Francisco at the worst. I feel like that should be the goal for every 4-game set, is that worst split. They're really, especially this early in the season, there's nothing wrong walking away with basically the same differential as you walked in with. I just think you're at a point now where you just want to build early leads to keep stress off your arms, because you don't want guys getting burnt out in April and May and June, because then when you get to that point where they're throwing so many high stress innings, by June, July, you're starting to run into issues. So I think, I think a reasonable goal is take the series with Arizona, hope for a sweep. A sweep should be pretty obtainable from the worst team in baseball.
I think so. Really, for me, I'm the only one and this is knock on wood, I'm only really concerned about that second game because that's Zach Gallen going against him. I know he had a down year last year, but Zach Gallen's still a pretty damn good pitcher. The first game is against Zach Davies, and I'm sorry if you can't hit Zach Davies in 2022. That's a different problem. And then the third game, I think it's Caleb Smith, and they haven't announced a starter for the Mets, but let's face it, it's probably going to be David Peterson, unless something unforeseen happens, because that's going to be Tylan Walker's spot. So Bassett, Carrasco, and all likely David Peterson against Zach Davies, Zach Gallen, and again, I believe it's Caleb Smith. Mets have, as of right now, the second best run differential in all of baseball, only to Cleveland, who is scoring at an ungodly rate right now, similar to Oakland, who I'm watching right now. I don't think both those teams are going to keep up that scoring rate. So it's interesting to see them scoring at this kind of pace. But Arizona yesterday in their game against Houston, which actually won 2-1, I think they had all with walks and hit by pitch included 10 total between just free bases, and they only scored 2 runs and it took them 11 innings. So this is a team where even if you get guys on base, you could still get them out without any damage happening. Hopefully that's gonna be the case. Hopefully we don't have to worry many base runners at all from Arizona.
Well, I even think inversely, the Mets have done a good job of taking advantage of the free base runners, of defensive errors, of mishaps from other teams. I mean, yeah, the one game in Philly, they scored I think like 4 runs off Bohm errors alone,
Right.
but that's a lot better than not scoring any runs off them. I think the Mets have so far done a good job of taking what the opposing team is giving you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's I don't love that phrase. I think it's kind of stupid and kind of cliche. But, if you're going to have teams giving you free passes, coming inside and not being able to do it effectively and clipping you in the elbow guard, if you're going to have teams give you free bases on just what's routine ground ball to third, you got to be able to cash in on those.
And they didn't do that last year. That was another issue.
No, I mean, the Mets are a terrible situational team last year. It was just
They're
bad.
awful.
It was bad. So, I think it's another huge improvement so far. And it's something you want to see them keep up, especially, like I said at the beginning, you got to beat up on the bottom feeders of the league.
Arizona's going to be another bottom feeder. They have Ketel Marte, and I'm going to enjoy watching him. That's all they got there.
Yeah, I mean, we could you could pull up tankathon.com in September, and your bottom 2 teams in the draft order might just be Washington and Arizona.
Right.
I mean, there is a serious chance that that's what's going on. So I think you just got to be able to beat up on them. And if you can't, we saw it last year. Arizona gave the Mets fits last year. I think the Mets put up 5 in the first inning on a YouTube TV game, and then David Peterson gave them all back and broke his toe in the start. Or broke his toe before the start, something like that. So, you have to be able to take advantage of those games. But you also hope with a more mature team, I think a more mature coaching staff, one that's definitely been around the block a lot more. You just hope that the understanding and the messaging is better, because it's when you're losing winnable games against the worst teams in baseball, that immediately goes back to coaching with no other real excuse. And you just hope coaching is better this year. And as a product of that, you've got to be able to beat up on the bottom teams. I think we saw it. Granted, Colorado's 4-1, but LA let some winnable games slip away from them in Denver.
Right.
And Colorado might be sitting at 4-1, but it might be more of like, they should be a 2-3 team. They should be off to a not so great start because the Dodgers let a couple winnable games slip away.
And then they went to Minnesota, who by all accounts is a better team, and knocked their doors off. So,
and I think
that's how it is.
Yeah, and I just think what's going to start to separate teams early in the year as we start to kind of see what each team really is it's always I think, at least in football, they say the best measuring stick for a Super Bowl contender is just how badly you beat up on the bad teams. But I think whoever takes advantage of the bad teams first and whoever starts to pile up those wins, I mean, if by the end of the series in Arizona, you have 4 with Washington, you have 3 with Arizona at home and 3 in Arizona, if you're sitting at like 8-2, maybe even 9-1, 7-3, you have to like that. Definitely. If you play 700 baseball against the shittiest teams in baseball, you're going to the playoffs.
You're doing your job.
You are a playoff team.
You have to dominate the bad teams and play 500 ball against the good teams. That's a recipe for success.
Right, and then there's so much that can go wrong in the year, and there's so much that can, if you can't beat teams in your division, or you can't beat Atlanta for whatever reason, that can keep you from the playoffs, sure. But the one thing that'll for sure keep you from the playoffs every year, year in, year out, is if you cannot beat the bottom teams in the league. And you know what? The Marlins and the Nationals, even late in the year, gave the Mets fits last year.
They sure did.
I mean, even like for all intents and purposes, Washington wasn't a good team. They had like 3 good weeks because Kyle Schwarber lost his goddamn mind. But you know what? They couldn't. They still had winnable games that they had let get away. So I think
let's not forget the game where the Mets had like a 9-0 lead in the 7th, and they won the game still, but the Nationals tied it up late. That stuff can't happen.
No, I think the D's, obviously you want to be able to beat the good teams. They handled Philly very well. You're very excited to see how they look against the Giants. But if they could even sweep the Giants. But if they go like 3-3, 2-4 against the Diamondbacks in their 6 games, I think that might say more than it does, how you play against the Giants. Because if you cannot beat the bad teams,
that's how you get yourself in trouble.
Right. I mean, it feels like the Mets had 5 or 6 winnable games get away from them last year against bad teams, specifically Arizona. You have 2 or 3 alone against Arizona, but you can't win. They just couldn't win those games.
Both Pittsburgh series.
Right. If you win, maybe
they went 3-4 against Pittsburgh last year, I think.
For all intents
and purposes,
if you win 2 of those games against Arizona that you let get away, you win 2 or 3 more against Pittsburgh, you're in a much better spot going into that last series of the year, and you're not necessarily punching up as hard as you are. And you feel better about yourselves. And we might be looking at a different story.
Yeah.
Because what separated the Mets and the Braves late in the year, and even separated the Mets and the Phillies, was once the Mets let things start to slip away, things slipped away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just collapsed. But part of that was because you're in a spot. You're not in as good of a spot as you should be because you're letting games against Pittsburgh and Arizona slip away. Games against, you're letting games against in Miami. I was there. You're up 2-1. You let Brian Anderson walk it off on you.
Yeah.
I mean, you let winnable games slip away against bottom tier teams. And I've been saying it all episode. I'll say it again. You have to be able to beat up on these shitty teams. If you can't, you're not doing anything. But so far, the Mets are doing it. I think Arizona, these next 6 games, I think you got to go 4-2, 5-1.
4-2, you're happy.
4-2, you're happy. I mean, whatever's going to happen in the Giants series is going to happen. You could tell me that team's going to win 80 games. You could tell me that team's going to win 100 games again. I'd probably believe both. But you just have to be able. I think the 2 good measuring sticks for this team so far early in the year, even just looking to schedule holistically, is how they start off in their 10 games against what really are 2 bottom 3 teams in baseball, and how they looked against Philly. We all know the Mets are not as good as the Braves, but the space in between the Mets and the Phillies, at least on paper coming into the year, was micro thin.
Right.
I mean, there is minimal space to very comparable teams. Philly might have better offense, but the Mets have better pitching. Mets starting pitching will be better, but bullpens are pretty similar. Coaching staffs even are constructed relatively similar.
Mm-hmm.
They're very comparable teams, and the Mets look like the better team.
Yeah.
And that's great, but if you can't beat the bad teams,
doesn't matter.
No, I mean, I think you have to come out the gates just beating the shit out of the bad teams. You have to.
Yeah.
Because even if you struggle in division, even if you just then go get beat up in Philly again and the Braves beat you up, you're still keeping yourself in it by beating up on the bad teams. Yeah. I mean, that's what the Broncos did last year. The Broncos were in it for a while because they started off their year beating the hell out of the Jets, Giants, and Jaguars. But
it happens.
No, but I mean,
Giants suck.
Yeah. But so you hope that they can come out and look strong enough against the bad teams. It felt like last year the Mets were the type of team that were good enough to beat the bad teams, but bad enough to lose to the good teams. So now you hope that taking another step forward this year, better roster, I'd even argue a more complete roster, you've got to be able to take 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6. I mean, I said at the beginning of the show that Diamondbacks have like a .310 winning percentage since the start of 2021. They're losing 69% of their games. Go win 67% of your games against them at the worst.
At the worst.
I mean, I don't want to say anything less is unacceptable.
I'll say it.
But I'll say it. Anything less than 4 wins in 6 games against Arizona is unacceptable.
Damn straight.
I mean, that's the worst
purely
team in
based
baseball.
on the team's freaking payroll. If you go less than a split, if you go a split or less, it's a disappointment.
Absolutely, especially at home.
You need to knock the crap out of these teams.
Because I mean, Carrasco looked good. You have Bassett, who looked great. Peterson looked good. Your starting pitching is rolling, and this is a terrible offensive team. If you can't knock them around, if you can't keep the runs at a minimum, it's going to cause some question marks. I think last year, one of the first real signs that the Mets were not as good as we thought they were going to be last year was when they went into Arizona and let 2 very winnable games slip away.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have a 140 team batting average. If a team with a 140 team batting average comes in to face a team with a starting staff ERA of 1.23 or whatever the hell it is, that's an abomination to lose.
It's like 3 hits a game.
Exactly.
It's like 4 hits a game.
That's my point.
Jesus. But I think you also bring up I think we both now touched on like the pitching matchups you have set up for the Arizona series. You're going to have McGill, Scherzer, Bassett those first 3 games against the Giants.
Right.
I think it's going to be very, we know what Scherzer is. We mostly know what Bassett is. But so far, McGill has ran
There's going to be a
over.
Scherzer versus Logan Webb matchup. That's going to be fun.
Damn. Was that not game 5 of the NLDS too? Or did Scherzer start game 7 of the NLCS? It might have been.
Was that the game Scherzer came out of the bullpen?
No, yes? Question mark.
It might have been that one because I think that was Webb versus Buehler.
That's probably who it was. But I think the most important start of Tyler McGill's career to date so far will come against the Giants.
Right.
You ran over. He just made a bad Washington team look stupid. Philly bats were ice cold to start the series, and they continue to look ice cold against him. I think they looked much better the second game or the third game. But if he can still look the way he has against a good Giants team that plays the matchups probably better than any other team in baseball in a long time.
Right.
I mean, that's why the Giants won 108 games because they got just about every matchup right. But if he can continue to look the way he has looked against a team that just won 108 games and had minimal losses offensively, you can't really complain at all.
No.
It's probably it'll be the most telling start of his career so far.
Yeah, I think the first one prior to this year was that Yankee start where he went 7 innings, struck out 10. That was a tremendous performance, but absolutely the most important start of Tyler McGill's short career so far is going to be against the San Francisco Giants coming.
Because even if he goes 5-6 innings, gives up 2 runs, you still take that. Especially from a guy who's penciled in as your 6th starter.
If any one of the 5 guys goes out there and gives me 6 innings of 2-run ball against the San Francisco Giants, you will not find me saying, man, I wish this guy gave us more. You can't ask for more than that, especially in this day and age with all the home runs and the depth that certain lineups have. 6 innings of 2 runs. That's stellar. It's stellar.
I have a great segue now. You bring up home runs.
Okay.
Francisco freaking Alvarez, 3 homers, all taters so far for Binghamton.
Yeah, none of them cheap.
I've been to that ballpark in Hartford where the Yard Goats play. It's not a bandbox by any sense. It even kind of just watching games there feels like a bit of a pitcher's park. I mean, his second home run, it looked like he got it in on the fists and still took it out to the gap in left center. It's going to be your little prospect highlight for the episode. He's off to a great start. Brett Beatty in Binghamton is off to a good start. Ronnie Mauricio is off to a good start. I'm going to give my St. Lucie Mets a plug here. Alex Ramirez, remember the name.
It's a guy that we talked about a little bit in one of our prospects episodes before and during the offseason. This is the guy we're going to track this guy.
You want to talk about, and deservedly so, Alvarez being the youngest guy in AA, and that's, he's 20, he's a tank. Alex Ramirez turned 19. He is younger than me. His birthday, just to make you guys feel old.
I'm already
January 1st. Stupid. January 13th, 2003.
2003?
I'm August 19th, 2002.
2003?
He is 12 for 21 to start with 3 doubles, a triple, and only 3 strikeouts.
I'm so stuck on 2003. I was in second grade.
He's got like 25 potential.
I hate it here.
And the ability to stay in center field long term. If there is one guy that you want to bring up to sound smart around your Mets fan friends, it's Alex Ramirez. He had a good year in Class A last year. Really felt like a good coming out party for him, but power wasn't totally there. OPS was in the low 700s, but from 18-year-old in full season as one of the younger guys there, you absolutely take it. The Mets chose to be passive with him, starting him out in St. Lucie again.
But at 19, you're fine with that.
12 for 21 to start the year with
That's
4 extra base hits.
incredible.
It's insane.
That's incredible.
I mean, I follow the St. Lucie team. I watch their games on MILB TV. I mean, I noticed he was off to a good start. I mean, he came into the game yesterday hitting 500, and you're like, wow, damn, like that's impressive. And then last night he goes out with a 4 for 5 with 2 doubles.
Is that good?
That's really damn good. I mean, the notion for years was the Mets have no outfield prospects. Conforto was the last one. But you're really starting to see a good group of guys. I mean, Khalil Lee had a damn near 500 on base percentage in AAA last year.
Is that good?
That's really good. I mean, Nick Plummer had a great year last year. Might be nothing more than a 4th or 5th outfielder in the major leagues. But he had a good year last year. And Alex Ramirez is hitting fucking 556 to start. Look, I'm going to tell you guys, if there's one team you want to pay attention to sound smart about your friends and to be able to say, given I told you so in like 3-4 years, just look at St. Lucie. I mean, you got a rotation full of guys they picked up in the draft last year. And Mike Bassel went out chucking his first start of the year. 4 innings, I think 6 or 7 Ks, hit 97. I mean, for you prospect guys out there, Shervian Newton is somehow still only 22.
I think I've heard for a while too.
So I remember I think it was 2018 or 19. He was kind of in discussions to, maybe be a guy they protect from the Rule 5. As the year the rosters were expanded to 26, discussion maybe they protect him from the Rule 5.
Right.
Off to a great start, one he definitely needed. I think he's got 3 or 4 doubles out the gate. You're also kind of now at a point with some of these guys. I think a lot of years are make or break years for prospects. He hasn't had a good year in about 2 or 3 years. He's off to a great start. I mean, they have a guy in their lineup, Jack Thomas Wold, out of UNLV, who slugged like 800 his senior year. I mean, granted, that's Las Vegas, but that's still hard to do, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, if you want to sound smart around your prospects and to your general Mets fan friends, check out St. Lucie. They're 4-1. Calvin Ziegler, Dominic Campbell, Mike Vassell, they're all in that rotation. Carson Seymour, Keyshawn Askew. These are all top 10 picks for the Mets last year who were slotted 1 through 5 in that rotation. I mean, that's a fun team. They're young. They have a good core.
It's like I said last episode. This is the first time in a while that Mets fans can be really excited about not only what's happening on the field, but also what's happening and down in the farm system for the future. The last time we were at the Steelers was probably around the time of Jose Reyes and David Wright back in 2003. So Alex
even when you had
born, Alex Ramirez knows Mike Piazza is a freaking San Diego Padre. Can we talk about that for a second?
I mean, even like the days when you got Harvey, Wheeler, Syndergaard, Matt's all coming up. But even then, that's like 4 guys you're really focusing on. And obviously, you're really focusing on Vientos, who's off to a cold start, Beatty, Alvarez, and Mauricio. Yeah, but it's a system that is progressively getting deeper and deeper. I mean, even I have the box score up. The first 5 batting averages in the St. Lucie Mets lineup last night. Alex Ramirez, 571. Stanley Consuegra, who, if he can stay healthy, is a mammoth, 348. Justin Guerrero, who was a pick last year, 353. Shervian Newton, 438. Carlos Dominguez, another mammoth, 273. I mean, the OPS is 1,435 for Ramirez, 810 for Consuegra, 947 for Guerrero, 151 for Newton, 151 for Dominguez.
That's pretty good.
I mean, like, you're not looking at these teams to go out and win, to put up a 600, 650 winning percentage. You want to see the development of these guys.
Right.
It's why Binghamton's going to be so much fun. I think they've only won like 2 games so far. But every other night, it's like every night you got a highlight from one of those 3 guys in the heart of the order.
Right.
I mean, we're going to start getting them from Vientos and Carlos Cortez in AAA soon, because you just know those guys' bats are going to come around. But the St. Lucie Mets, and I'll be down in St. Lucie a lot this summer, making a 2-hour trip from Orlando. They're going to win a lot of games. They're going to hit a lot of home runs. And I'll do my damn best to make sure Alex Ramirez is a prospect household name for Mets fans in no time. Because if he's going to keep this up, he's going to be mashing in Brooklyn soon.
Right.
And you're going to get more media attention in Brooklyn from the Mets and from Mets fans just because you're right there. And then in no time, I mean, he cracked Keith Law's top 100 list as number 100.
As number 100, yeah.
And that was after putting up like a 710, 715 OPS on him. And I think Law is a lot higher on him than a lot of other people. Law is one of the first guys to really point out, like, look, this could be a 2020 long-term center fielder.
It was the only one that I saw Ramirez on.
It's the only one he was on. But even then, I think a lot of people that, surround themselves with Mets prospects and dive into all that stuff. You have him like 7 or 8 coming into the year. You have Lee above him, guys like that. I think he is far and away the best outfield prospect the Mets have, and that's probably one of the best ones they've had. Probably the best one they've had in their system for more than a year. So I'm not including Jared Kelenic. He's probably the best one they've had since Conforto or Nimmo, whichever one. Nimmo came up last. Probably the best one they've had since Nimmo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Conforto was 15.
Yeah, because Conforto was there in 15.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a great time to really look if you want to get yourself in the prospects, but don't know where to start. It's a little overwhelming because I did roster projections and I projected 120 guys on rosters. I still got like 40 of them wrong, and there were 20 guys that made rosters I didn't even think of.
Right.
I mean, it's a boatload of names.
I just hope for your sake you don't get so attached to these guys, and then we're saying Billy Upton needs to be aggressive, and they get shipped out to Seattle for Diego Castillo or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I think if you want to know who's going to be starting games for the Mets in 3, 4, 5 years, when Scherzer, DeGrom, Bassett, Walker, Carrasco, they're all out of town, you're going to want to start looking at the St. Lucie Mets.
There you go.
I mean, Mike Vassell, Calvin Ziegler, Dominic Campbell, those dudes shove.
They're dudes. That's they're dudes.
But Mike Vassell struck out like 7 and was hitting 97 as an 8th round pick.
That's a dude.
Mind you, coming out of the Commodores program, that is a top tier college baseball program. That's a dude. I mean, Dominic Campbell coming out of Dallas Baptist, looking as good as he did last year. Granted, not a great start last night. Looking as good as he did last year. That is a dude.
Yeah.
When I talked to Mark Tremuta last summer, that's one of the Mets scouting directors, I asked him, you look at guys that play in, the SEC, who play in the AAC or the ACC, how different do you look at those guys as opposed to, you guys got guys you have, coming out of the Mountain West, or even like high school guys you take or JUCO guys you take. You can argue aside from Major League Baseball, nothing gets more attention than top tier college baseball in terms of baseball.
100%, especially now with the TV deals that they're starting to get.
Right. I mean, the college baseball last year, you got Ole Miss and you got Vandy. Those are 2 huge name programs that are getting primetime slots on ESPN. I mean, Rowdy Jordan was an 11th round pick, but that man's playing on national TV as a leadoff hitter and center fielder for the college baseball champion. And he's off to a great start too. So, you guys want to start getting into prospects, knowing who to follow. It's even just nice knowing what's coming up. Who's going to be next up. If you're thinking, oh wow,
it's nice to even just follow along in the conversations. Just to be
just
a part
to know
of
what people are talking about.
Know some names, know some numbers about these guys, where they came from. Start paying attention so you could, one, educate yourself a little bit and educate your friends. Be like, wow, that guy, he knows a little bit about baseball. He knows more than I do. It's fun to be that guy. You're
going to have a lot of expiring contracts in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Either
a lot of expiring contracts.
Yeah, Walker and Carrasco aren't going to be here much longer, and even then, all right, well, Bassett might be a one and done. Scherzer's only on for 3 years. DeGrom is an opt out. Shit. For all we know, DeGrom might just pack his bags and go wherever this winter. I mean, you don't want to think about it, but it's a possibility.
Right.
You want to know who's next up?
Start paying attention.
Yeah, not all of them are going to hit a homer a game like Alvarez, but
well. There's only one generational guy, and that's Francisco Alvarez.
No, I fully think Alvarez is a top 2 prospect in baseball by mid-seasons because you're gonna have
some graduations.
Well, I mean, you got Torkelson, you got Rustman,
Bobby
Witt, Julio Rodriguez.
O'Neal Cruz will probably be off the list by then.
I mean, you even have when Riley Green isn't hurt anymore.
Right.
You have 7 or 8 guys graduate. I was looking at Fangraph's top 10 list. Only 2 guys are slated to not make major league debuts on opening day or shortly after they get off the IL. And that was Rodriguez with the Orioles,
He's coming up soon.
Grayson, I believe he's in Double A right now.
They're he
He might.
from what I've seen, it seems like they're on the
No,
brink
he might be
of
like
making doing a double to major league jump very soon.
no. Oh yeah, I think he's a guy who could definitely be up later in the year,
Yeah.
especially if he's making dudes look silly.
So I mean, hey, we could be here at this point next season with Francisco Alvarez being the number one prospect in all of baseball.
Yeah, I mean I even think like I think when you look at it long term, obviously, Ahmed Rosario was the top prospect in baseball at one point. Matt Harvey was too. You can't predict injuries. You know that guys are, it's going to happen to certain guys, and you understand that. But it's not often you get a generational talent catcher whose bat is already at a major league level at 20.
It's there.
At 20. I mean, if he can, I mean, his arm is there, I think. I think he's got a legit arm. I think most people would agree, probably having like between 50, 55, and 60 grade for his arm. That man can just learn to frame pitches.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're looking at a generational catcher.
Yeah.
And I think, especially given just how awful catching is in baseball today,
it's bad.
I mean, a top 4 catcher in baseball just flat out retired last year. I mean, catching is at a minimum.
There are some people that have Jonah Heim in their top 10 catchers.
No, I mean, like you ask yourself,
he's not even a full-time catcher there anymore.
Right. And even like Gary Sanchez, like, man, like he's just not there defensively. The bat is so touch and go, but he's probably still like a top 10, top 15 catcher in baseball.
Which says everything you need to know.
Which says everything you need to know about catching.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you have a generational catching prospect,
Austin Hedges is a top 6 catcher and he hits 130.
I mean, if this man can just learn to frame pitches.
But to be fair, I don't know why I'm holding my TV remote here. To be fair, just waved it around. By the time he's up, how much longer is framing even going to be an important skill for a catcher?
I mean, I think
it's still important now. That's why we need McCann to say him, because his framing is good and he can occasionally bop one out. But in 3-4 years,
no, you might have automated strike zone.
Exactly. So,
but like, I think even
I'm not saying rush him up, but
even in the case you don't, I think like you look at a guy like what Rosario was as a prospect, and like you say, look, if he can just figure out the plate discipline, a better approach, he'll be there. I don't think anyone expects him to be as bad defensively as he's been. I don't think anyone saw that coming.
Right.
But the plate discipline and the approach just never took that jump. That's one of the hardest things for a prospect to take a jump with. So when you have a guy who already has a good approach and good discipline, and you just need some of the defensive stuff to come around, like, come on.
To the freaking moon.
Come. Oh. I mean, I think we're at a point in baseball where 2 of the positions that have a minimum for talent are third base and catcher.
Yeah.
And the Mets have arguably have the best catching prospect in baseball, but seems to be a consensus.
And has he overtaken Rutschman?
Well, I mean, Rutschman's going to graduate.
Well, I'm saying right now, who would you take as a better prospect, Rutschman or Alvarez?
I think Rutschman, just because he's ready.
Yeah, he's also ready. I think he's more well-rounded defensively.
He's a more well-rounded player.
Offensively, I think Alvarez is there.
I mean, I remember reading something last year that people thought, like scouts that were in St. Lucie, thought that he already had an MLB-ready bat.
He very easily could.
Not in St. Lucie, in Brooklyn. In high A, people thought he had an MLB-ready bat.
He just doesn't know how to hit the ball soft.
No,
everything like minimum exit velocity is like 90.
I mean, go find the video of his second home run. It looks like he gets it like the ball Marte hit yesterday up the middle. Right. It seemed like he got it in that same spot in the bat, and he put it out to left center field gap, which is relatively deep in Hartford.
So like what Vladdy did yesterday with 98.
Right. And the fact that that's not a gentle comparison to Vladdy Guerrero.
A 19, 20-year-old is being compared to Vladdy Guerrero right now. Only here on the Amazing City.
It's insane, man. I mean, I feel like we have to have a segment for him every time because we can't just not talk about him.
I mean, yeah, we don't really plan on talking about them.
If you live in the Binghamton area or you go to Binghamton Mets games, go get them in now. Go see him while you can, because this dude's going to be in AAA by midseason at the rate he's going.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get to Brooklyn at some point. Speaking of Brooklyn, we have another little fun event coming up between us two. It starts on what, Sunday?
Sunday, Wednesday are the first two games.
NBA playoffs, Boston Celtics versus the Brooklyn Nets.
I saw something yesterday, like the Ringer put out their odds for championships for who would win.
Are Boston and Brooklyn like 1 and 2?
No, it's Boston comes in at like 40% chance.
Okay.
The Suns come in at like 28. That just leaves like 72% for the rest of the league, or 27% for the rest of the league.
I'm telling you, man, like there are very few teams.
Let's face it,
when the Nets put it together, they're a stupid good team. But so very few teams scare me in terms of who's going to stop this team from making a deep run. Boston's right up there because the way that Boston hasn't just been winning, they've been demolishing teams. Like you look at scores, like halfway through the third, they're up by 38 every freaking game. And it's like, that's intimidating. No, it's great that you have KD, Kyrie, maybe Ben Simmons plays at some point in the series. But when you're up by 40.
No, I mean, they had, I think, at 19 different points in the year, or at 19 different road games this year, they had at least a 20-point lead at least once. That's road games.
That's insane.
I mean, I think it's just the fact that you went from 16 and 19 to finishing, like 52 wins, 53 wins, 51 and 31.
Enough to be the 2 seed.
And I legitimately, I think of the 3 leading contenders for Defensive Player of the Year, 2 of them are Celtics. It's Smart and Robert Williams.
Right.
I mean, and it's just, I remember I'm not as interested in the NBA as I used to be, partially because I'm out of market and I don't have the NBA TV, because it's hard to have both MLB TV and NBA TV on top of Sunday Ticket. I just can't afford that much fandom.
Right.
But I mean, that's just unfathomable. And with a rookie head coach at the helm.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, and I think the biggest thing with Boston is they heard it. They heard people talking. I mean, I think basketball more than any other sport, the players are going to hear people talking. You're going to hear what people say.
Yeah.
They heard it. I mean, everyone's saying break up Tatum and Brown, trade one of them off their own way.
Those were some takes for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't see anyone in the East stopping them.
It's going to be tough. I feel like if it does happen,
even if they go like
guard again. Oh, it just fell.
I mean, even if they split in Boston to start, they've been so good on the road they could put up a 25, 30-point win in Brooklyn.
It's going to be a fun series. That's it, for sure. It's going to be a fun series. Hopefully it works out on my end, but I don't know. I'm far more worried about Boston than I am Philly.
I don't think there's much reason to be worried about Philly.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I'm concerned about basketball-wise, shifting to college basketball, UConn's losing a player to the portal like every other day. UConn has, I think, 4 graduates and 5 guys in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
You have 13 scholarship slots. It's like 60, 70% of your team.
So that's everything. Yeah. Pretty much.
I think the most interesting thing to watch in sports the next 3 or 4 years is going to be to see how the transfer portal works with NIL deals and all that. And if this ever you got like 1,000+ dudes in the portal right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
It kind of sucks because you saw the run that St. Peter's had, and then I think 4 other guys immediately went to the portal. It's unfortunate, but that's
right. Yeah. And I think like Loyola might have been the last team where you see go on some miracle run and then stick together and build on program success.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, I don't want to sound like a cranky old man, but it's like, it feels like anyone who thinks they're a top 100 recruit on any form of website, like you and I could shit out a top 100 college basketball guys or top 100 college basketball recruits. And if someone sees their name on there and they don't play a lot their freshman year, they're going to want out.
They're going to want out. Yeah.
I mean, I think UConn had 2 guys that came in at the lower end of the top 100 last year that didn't get a lot of minutes. And even when they got garbage time minutes, they were blowing leads left and right. They immediately entered the portal. I mean, it feels like a lot. Like it's done with the days of like taking that year, taking the 2 years, figuring it out. They're done. I mean, like it feels like just 2 years ago. Like James Bouknight, lottery
Oh
pick,
yeah.
Charlotte Hornets. I mean, he didn't play a lot his freshman year, but started getting games late, started to get better as the season went on, and then just had a monster sophomore year and is a lottery pick.
Mhm.
But he was like a top 70, 80 recruit coming out. It's gonna be weird. I mean, I wonder if this ever like settles down.
I mean, you're still seeing it a little bit because,
I mean,
and I
I
really
read
only know about this because it's the school that I follow with North Carolina. Armando Baycott was the top high school recruit. He came to North Carolina, and he just said he's coming back for, I think this is what, his third year. Very rarely do you see him do stuff like this. It's not very often, but I mean,
I just read something this morning that like a guy who's a quarterback at Georgia and some I think USC. It's only in his third year of eligibility, and he's transferring for a second time.
yeah, I can't.
I mean, like 3 schools in 3 years. I mean, like I know a lot of these guys don't necessarily care too much about the academic side, more so the athletic side, because that's what they're there for.
Right.
But like, dude, at some point, it just
Maybe
feels
it's
like
not
no
the
one.
school guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone's got agents telling them. I sound like such a cranky old man right now. Like I'm sure they all got agents telling them, no, like you're a top 50 recruit level. Like the
Yeah.
list got it wrong. You put your name in the portal, go put up 20 somewhere, and then you can transfer to Duke. Then you can go transfer into Purdue. Like it's weird, man. Like that's almost why I kind of like college baseball, because it's not as big of a national sport. So like you're not like getting. I mean, like a dude transferring out of a Cinderella program in D1 got a lot of media attention, arguably more than like Vanderbilt gets in a regular season. That's the top college baseball program in the country.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's weird, man.
Well, that's all I got. I think we've touched on everything and more. We went on over an hour on just the Mets, and then we've gone on for another God knows how long for every other sport under the sun.
So we were in agreement. 4-6 from Arizona. Hope for a split with the Giants.
100%.
All right. So we'll be back after the homestand.
Any predictions for the series? Let's just start with the Arizona one, because you were on the freaking money about Bassick throwing a scoreless outing against Washington.
Carlos Carrasco is going to take a no-hitter into the 6th inning.
Okay. All right.
Hey, there's no point in predicting shit if you're going to go. Pete Alonso will have a 2-hit game.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
the Mets will at one point score more runs than the Diamondbacks. They're not like fucking Booger McFarland or something. Like,
yeah.
No, I mean, that's
you don't want to spike the ball on 4th down?
No.
All right, so let's
that's
see.
my
I don't
prediction.
think I can go that hot. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to change my take because mine was
timid.
Yeah, I was gonna say Starling Marte is gonna hit his first home run as a Met, but that's boring as shit compared to yours. We see an immaculate inning. I don't know from who, but someone throws an
Bassett might
immaculate
do
inning.
that against like Arizona 7-8-9.
I mean, if Edwin Diaz gets 7-8-9, I think
9 sliders, all swing and misses.
They're all rookies down there at that point.
Oh yeah, I think the last thing is I hope that for tomorrow, the Mets do the thing they did last year and have dirt on all their bottom knees.
That would be fantastic. That would be so freaking cool.
I think that was really cool when they did that.
Yeah.
I hope they do that again.
They really should.
It should be an awesome day.
Yeah.
Wayne and Howie were pointing out on the radio the other day. There's so much cool stuff lined up for this year.
Mm-hmm.
You got that Keith's number retirement. You have a Gil Hodges Day for his Hall of Fame induction.
A very underrated thing
Day
that Steve Cohen has done since he became owner is all the super cool things that he's done for the fans.
No, I mean, it's a fun, even just beyond the product, it's cool to be a Mets fan.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
You said it right. It's a fun time to be a Mets fan right now. You got a good team,
sucks.
high payroll. You're actually acting like a big market team. And now your owner is not only showing it on the field, but he's paying it forward to say, hey, we appreciate you fans. We're going to do the things that you've been saying for the past 20 years. So good on you, Steve Cohen.
Just Just give Bobby Bonilla the lump sum payment, and I think I could die happy.
Oh my God. Give him the lump sum payment and get Robinson Cano off this freaking team. And then we're all square.
ABC, we're all done.
Oh, yeah. All right. I mean, we've gone on for an hour and a half. Any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm all worried out.
All right. Yeah, same here. It's Jack Ramsey. Follow him at Jack W. Ramsey. Antonio Slater. Follow me at Antonio Slater. As always, LFGM.
Watch us on YouTube.
Watch us on YouTube.